Antarctica had been some kind of continent with a much milder climate and having a extraterrestrial race that lived there and originated there. There's this Admiral Byrd incident where the US brought a lot of material and personnel down there, and they had this encounter with those flying machines.
The ice structure of the whole thing would keep it from collapsing.
They were doing lots and lots of research in esoteric terms and also extraterrestrial technology.
What do you know about Antarctica, what some of the bases and beings there, some of the history? Today on Cosmic Disclosure, we're with Tim, a tactical advisor from Germany who analyzes and suggests various strategies in relation to extraterrestrial groups in contact with Earth. Also joining us today is Captain Randy Kramer, who claims to be the public spokesperson for the United States Marine Corps Special Section. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We're going to have a really intriguing episode today talking about bases and beings in Antarctica. So Tim, let's start with you. What do you know about Antarctica, what some of the bases and beings there, some of the history?
Yeah, so my knowledge about Antarctica is from documents, and it ends kind of somewhere in the 1960s. So Germany in the 1930s, 1920s, they were really interested in the now called UAP phenomena. It was then the Germans at that time had missions. They went to India, to different other parts, Tibet, and they were doing all this esoteric research, which was kind of popular at that time in Germany, much more popular than anywhere else in the world. And they came to the conclusion that before there was some kind of major magnetic pole shift, different continents looked differently. And they were assuming that Antarctica had been some kind of continent with a much milder climate and having a extraterrestrial race that lived there and originated there. So that was kind of interesting to them. And one of the reasons to go to Antarctica in order to A, find whatever's left there, and B, place a basis. And the documents say and state that especially the SS had some departments that were doing research on UFOs. We know the story about these from the British called them Foo Fighters, appearing everywhere in the Second World War scenario. And Admiral Byrd at that time, he got the task from Hitler to build a basis down in Antarctica, which he did, and they went there. It was especially the SS that was doing that. The Germans also sent the so-called Schwabenlander, which was a ship that the only aircraft carrier at that time. Had some aircrafts on it, so they could, explore Antarctica. But especially the SS did a lot of groundwork down there. And at some time, when the end of the war was coming, and it was, expectable that Germany is going to lose the war, at least in Europe, and Germany could not be saved anymore, Himmler himself, he had built kind of the first breakaway nation ever occurred in the modern times, because he was actually second man in the state after Hitler, but he kept all the technology for himself and the SS, and they kind of built the first black budget programs at that time and tried to ship everything down to Antarctica. The Americans have some of the submarines, they have found them. They also found material for the nuclear bomb, which seems to be a German invention. They seem to have worked on that. Also, a lot of scientists from that time were pretty deep in the nuclear research. From that, I guess, the American nuclear program emerged, and that's where they went, putting all people down there. I also think that from everything that I've gone through, that Heinrich Himmler, the Americans seem to have not caught him. There is a photograph which shows him dead on the ground, which kind of look a little bit like Himmler. Also put like the famous glasses on his eyes and his dead body. The story is that Himmler died in the interview. He killed himself while all the other military people are interrogating him. So the documents seem to say that Himmler took his chance to escape from Germany, put everything and all the technology on those on the Cow-class submarines, brought it to Antarctica. Hitler, in his last days, got the information that something was going on. Mm-hmm. In his last will, he was super furious. In his last will, he ordered to have Himmler killed, actually. And that's where the story went. That's what I read.
How many people were actually shipped over there to Antarctica, would you say?
Yeah, interesting. So the Germans had a mission and a program where they were systematically looking for orphans.
Orphans,
Yeah, orphans, so people who have no family. There was a program where they artificially tried to raise children for Germany. They took those because they actually have nothing to relate to.
Right.
And they sent them down there, as well as a whole lot of therapeutes and psychologists,
right.
Mostly females. So you have a lot of
Why is that?
Why is that? Because the documents seem to say that there's some kind of portal or something that extremely changes the perception of reality, and they needed stable people down there, so they put all those female therapists and psychologists onto those ships and submarines in order to preserve the sanity of the personnel.
Tim, most of the people think it's a polar cap. So how did they get in there, number one, and how did they form and get all the people on?
So they seem to have used a special class of submarines, which uses special state-of-the-art technology at that time in order to go very, very deep. I think it was almost double the depth of a conventional submarine. It was inside the so-called Führer convoy, which was, the collect or the class. They used that to transport material, technology down there. And so from the documents, they went down there, carved something. It kind of created a subclimate. So it's not freezing cold in there, just like maybe an igloo or something.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they built up on that.
So Randy, what do you think about that? How did they transform that area underneath the ice caps?
Yeah, my understanding that's basically correct. Some of the ice shelves, are 1,000 feet thick. Mm-hmm. So to get under them, you would have to, at the time, you would have had to have a submarine that could go, 800, 900, over 1,000 feet deep, which is at the time would be ridiculously deep. And then came up in what were natural ice quays, caverns that had sort of hollowed out a little bit, and then used steam to just make them as big as they needed to be. And then if you've got imagine you come underneath into an ice cave, and you steam out the cave, so it's got a 100-foot ceiling and it's several hundred feet wide. Well, the ice structure of the whole thing would keep it from collapsing. It would be like an igloo. It would be like 60 degrees in there or something like that. And you'd be out of the wind and the sub-zero temperatures and the stuff that kills people up on the surface for sure.
So why Antarctica?
So to my understanding, there's something about the polars of this planet which makes Antarctica interesting. I think in the first place, they thought of Antarctica being the lost continent. And that raised, the question, what's down there and what can we do with it? And also they needed a place where they could, build a base that is basically unconquerable. So lots and lots of technology that they went through in World War II, they brought down there. They took the time and the position that they had there in order to build it, to restructure and finalize it. And everyone who can look up things on Wikipedia, they will see that there's this Admiral Byrd incident where the US brought a lot of material and personnel down there, and they had this encounter with those flying machines.
You said earlier that the Germans were going down there because of not only that, but because of an extraterrestrial existence. Could you elaborate on how did they know that, and also what are these flying machines and who is operating them?
So they were doing lots and lots of research in esoteric terms and also extraterrestrial technology back in the 1920s, 1930s. Basically, there seems to have been some kind of species that once was there. I don't know, maybe you know something, Randy, who was down there. It seems to be, way back.
Right.
Yeah.
Ancient times.
Very ancient times.
Right. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Randy, for being on the show today.
Thank you, Emery.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this, make sure to watch the next video on Awaken Zone. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, but you won't want to miss what's coming next.